Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about how to improve retention and engagement through customer messaging. So my name is Josh Hollander. I'm on the customer success team at OneSignal. Customer success team is focused on driving strategy for all of our partners, starting from the implementation all the way through to setting KPIs and then ultimately driving those KPIs through optimizations and the strategies that we work together on. I've spent the last 10 years in different SaaS businesses focused on retail, media, Marcom, and just various technologies. So excited to be with you here today to talk a bit more about OneSignal. So the way we're going to break up the discussion today, we've got 4 sessions that we're going to talk through. So we'll start with understanding the customer journey. From there, we'll turn into the customer messaging channels. So specifically talk about what channels are there to leverage, how you can use those channels in different verticals, different stages of that customer journey, and then ultimately, how do we measure success? So we all are trying to measure and evaluate the tactics that we're using. So we want to make sure we talk about how can we do that both in OneSignal and through partners, and we'll leave some time at the end for a Q&A. Feel free to type those questions in as we're going. We will definitely leave some time at the end and try to get through all of those that are there. So jumping right in, understanding the customer journey. Really the focus here is the why. So we're fighting for time and attention. And so whether you're a retailer, creating a game, a media outlet, there's a lot of things vying for your customers' attention today. So in the retail space specifically, we know that there's a lot of competition, whether that is somebody is starting their research on a search engine, or they ended up on a search engine and then they get exposed to a different brand or a different retailer. It's creating some pretty unnatural habits, and it's driving our cost of acquisition up. And so there's really different tactics we can take to try to preserve that. On the gaming side, there's been a proliferation of games coming out into the market. And this is great because we're seeing more and more of the gamers coming into the market and downloading those. But the problem is it's driving the cost of monetization up significantly. And then those retention rates continue to get harder and harder. If you think about from a news outlet perspective, this is an area that's gotten just beat over the last few years. So there's more than 3,000 news outlets out there from a more of an accredited perspective, but then you have all of the social media, talk radio, and user-generated content that are out there as well. And so the proliferation has just been so extreme, it's becoming harder and harder. And a lot of times it's a matter of who got out there first versus necessarily what is the accuracy of news. And so we really want to focus on how do we help you build a customer base and maintain those. And then just as you think about any market, iOS 14.5 and Google are all really focused on eliminating third-party cookies. They want to put a stronger emphasis on their customers, and they're thinking about ways that they can do that. And so as you think about how you've acquired customers today or had to reacquire those customers you acquired once, it's going to continue to get harder and more expensive. And so we really want to put an emphasis on how can you start to earn those customers and then continue to engage with them through your own vehicles. A strong position that we take here is that ultimately your customer journey is the path to that. Every business's customer journey is going to be different. Even if you're in the same space as somebody, it could potentially be very different in terms of how do you try to acquire that customer? What are those touch points with the customer over time? And then how do you continue to expand that loyalty with that customer, which can either be getting them reading more, coming back to the game, or ultimately buying more products. We as marketers or as different companies have focused very heavily on traditional media vehicles, which has been a one to many. While this has worked in the past, personalization has become more and more important. And so that's an area I really want to focus on as we think about both building out the customer journey for your particular business, as well as how do you start to leverage those customer messaging with OneSignal to be able to talk to each customer in a way that is going to resonate with them and ultimately get them to take the actions that we're trying to have them take with us. So with that, I want to start to jump into the customer messaging channels. In this section, we're really going to talk about what are those different channels, what do they do, and how do they fit in each different type of customer journey through the processes that you're creating for them. So we have 5 channels that we really focus on here at OneSignal. Mobile push is the ability to talk to a customer through your mobile app. This is one of the most prolific areas, or the best areas, I should say, that you can focus on. That customer has come in, they've downloaded the app, they've opted in, and this is a really strong signal for you to start to take advantage of. Obviously, mobile apps are not the right fit for every business. And so we've expanded into also the web push. This can be web push both on your desktop or on the mobile phone. Again, same idea. You have the ability to send one-to-one messages to those customers upon their opt-in. We also have what we call in-app messaging. In-app messaging is great because it gives you the ability to talk to anybody who comes into your app. They don't have to opt in and give you permissions. It's simply using the app gives you the opportunity to talk to them. We also have the ability to do some very robust amount of content sharing in there, as well as different types of media that you can put in there. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. You have your traditional email. Again, this is good use case in some instances, but it is something that has been used a lot. We as customers are starting to get tired of it, and we have looked at these other areas. And so I definitely recommend using this sparingly depending on where you are. And then finally, SMS. This is an area of a lot of growth and a lot of excitement in marketing right now. You're seeing more and more people focus on building SMS as a channel that they can leverage. We just need to keep in mind, this is a very expensive channel. And so as we talk about the measurement and the use cases, we want to be very clear in terms of what are we trying to get out of SMS and make sure it's easy to be able to get that so that we can track those results and tie revenue back to it in some way. So as you think about the customer journey that you're going to build and the way that you're going to leverage that for the customers, the first piece is really onboarding. It's cliche, but you only get one chance to make a first impression. And that first impression is both in terms of how do you ask for permission to be able to start to message to somebody, as well as once they've opted in, what is that first type of message that you're going to send to them? Make sure that you're providing utility to the customer. You want them to understand they're giving you access to them and the right to speak to them, and they're going to get something in return for it. It is a bit transactional in that sense, but it is important to remember that you're not going to get subscription access to all of these customers. And so when they do get it, or when you do ask for it, make sure they understand what they're going to get for it. Depending on what your business is, this can fall into a lot of different categories. It could be you want to ask for the ability to send them those mobile pushes. Maybe it's important that you want to be able to update them on where's their food order, or you want to be able to tell them when a live event is starting to happen in your game. If you're asking for location, make sure they understand why they're asking for that location and what you're going to do with it. Data points for engagement. This is something we think very strongly about here because we want to be able to segment that audience and make sure we're talking to one group with a very specific type of message or another group with a different type of message. Again, depending on what is appropriate to them, or even cookie tracking. Like we talked about, if you're going to ask for the ability to track their usage across other apps or across the web, make sure they understand the value they're going to get back from that, because they're not going to give you that permission unless they do. Different ways that you can do that. So like I mentioned before, if you get that permission for a mobile push and you send them that first mobile push, make sure you're continuing them down the journey, whether that's getting them to set preferences, create an account, or really focused on what is the next step to get the most out of the app that they just downloaded. In-app messages are great to be able to not only capture the information or the data that you're trying to get and make sure they understand why, but also if you're a game or a workout app, make sure they understand how do you use this app. Give them the opportunity to know what each of the buttons are. What is the gameplay? How do you earn lives? How do you win? How do you drive success? These are all really important. In-app messaging, as you can see in the example here, gives you the ability to have multiple screens and really get a lot of information across in very small tidbits that ultimately lead to a pretty high satisfaction. And then there's the tried and true email. Email is good in the instances if you're a retailer or you're somebody who's focused on, I want to get newsletters, I want to get promotions sent to somebody. This is still a very strong way to go about it. Think about though, what does that first email say in the onboarding sequence? Are you making sure they understand the cadence they're going to get? What is the utility, going back to that word again, or the value that they're going to ultimately see? Make sure they understand all of this so that that first email doesn't immediately get marked as spam, or they don't immediately unsubscribe. Because if that's what happens, we've already started to lose the value. Once you've gotten the opt-in, we're going to need to focus on how do we continue to engage them. So we're going to break this down by a few different verticals. First, we're looking at retail here. So bring shoppers back. Bring shoppers back to the site. There's a lot of different ways you can do this and a lot of different touch points that make sense. If I've been on the site, I've been browsing, I've added something to my cart, but I didn't ultimately make the purchase, send a push notification an hour later, whether that's on a mobile push or web push. Of course, it's going to be dependent upon which vertical or vehicle they've been on, and then try to bring them back. We know you can increase your conversion rates by about 15% when leveraging this. Email is another one you can use as well. We do see this coming out of the box for a lot of the email providers out there. Again, my caution with an email, it's going to get a bit lost sometimes. And so try to stand out and do things different. Also, you'll notice there's 3 different ways to go in the recommendation here. Let the customer decide. Let them tell you what makes sense for them, because we don't want to force them down a particular journey. Everybody is a bit unique, and we want to allow that personalization. And more of the touch points where it's, okay, we want to try to bring people back to the site because we need to get additional sales or we need to focus on something else. Think about, there are ways to talk about sales to your customers, whether that's a semi-annual sale, giving first access to some based on their lifetime value or the amount of revenue or money they've spent with you. A new product line has launched on the site. Inventory change, meaning that something has come back in inventory or a particular color is now available. Again, these are all great opportunities to send those engagements out to the customers, bring them back to the site, and try to get them to convert. This is going to be very dependent on how they engage with you in the past. Mobile push, web push are really strong contenders here. This is one of those opportunities where SMS can make sense. If you're a brick and mortar store and you're trying to bring people back into that store to get them to purchase, don't be afraid to leverage the SMS. We know that this is a very high converting vehicle. And again, just make sure you have a way to measure it in place. We'll talk about that a bit more. And then finally, from an in-app perspective, when somebody opens that app, if you do have it available to them, know that even if they haven't subscribed, you're going to have the opportunity to talk to them. And when they log in, give them that information about a promotion or a sale that you're running, or think again, hey, this is a strong customer. I can see based on their rewards activity, they've got these points that are about to expire. Don't be afraid to put those types of messages. That's really adding utility to the customer and going to build brand loyalty and keep them coming back when they know that there's information that's valuable to them. If you're more on the media side, breaking news. Obviously, like we said, you want to be first. You want to be top of mind with your readers. So breaking news is a great way to do this. Mobile push, web push are the most obvious. I haven't seen people testing it yet, but SMS is an area I think that this is going to start to expand into as well. Again, it is a very expensive vehicle, but if this is a subscriber base, meaning they're paying for access to the content, it makes sense to go ahead and give that little additional effort. Again, they're paying customers. Don't be afraid to invest a bit into them so that they feel like they're getting the most out of that subscription they're paying you. I like to suggest to my customers that you really want to think about messaging to the audience in the number of times that they visit your site in a given week. So if I visit the site twice a week, don't send me any more than 2 messages. If I'm only visiting the site once a week, though, maybe a digest on a weekly basis is really the best type of push to get out there. And so this gives you an opportunity to send me a specific message that talks about the articles that are most likely to resonate to me. And again, through data and an understanding of the customer, you're able to do all of those things within the OneSignal dashboard. So leverage your mobile push or your web push to really get them excited about, there's a digest, here are the specific articles that make sense for you. If you're using email in this particular use case, you can go a little longer form and you can actually list out the specific articles versus calling out, there's a digest ready for you. Whatever is the approach that you take, again, make sure it fits to what are we trying to achieve with that customer, and what is that customer going to get value from as they come to the site. As you're thinking about your mobile games, you want to promote your players to return. So gameplay is a very strong indicator of the success that you're driving. Make sure that you are sending messages to the customers based on gameplay that makes sense. So if it's a real-time based game and you have to let X amount of time pass before a building is ready, when that building is complete, send a message. When lives are ready to be used again, if you're a live-based game, again, send a message letting them know their lives are available again. If you're running promotions, it may make sense to send a note to those customers letting them know you can buy tokens or coins in the game for a discounted rate right now. Again, all of those are very specific to mobile push and different touch points where you want to talk to your group. In-app here is a great opportunity, as we talked about earlier, not only to give people a good understanding of how to play the game, but also what updates have you released? Are there new weapons? Is there new gameplay altogether, new levels? Make sure they understand what's happening there and take advantage of live events. Live events are an area your teams are investing heavily in, not only to create the experience, but to market to get people in. Once they've gotten in, make sure they understand this is happening. This is what happened. Here are the results. How did they stack rank? Give them a reason to feel competitive and continue to play that game. And then personalize the messages. In the world, you have an understanding of what is their screen name, what level are they, what is their achievements in the game. Don't be afraid to leverage those to try to push people to not only come back into the game and play more, but to get to that next level. Because you know at a certain point, the goal, or they're going to reach a point where they're going to need help of some sort. And that's a great way to try to start to monetize them. So we've done all this investment in focusing on how to get players engaged with our games, or focused on being good customers. Now we really need to focus on the retention side of it. OneSignal offers automated messages for this specific use case. We keep an understanding of when was the last time somebody visited the site, and we want to offer to you the ability to create sequences that says, if somebody hasn't been on my site, in my game, in X amount of time, send them a message to try to bring them back. And we know automation is the best way to do this. And so you have the ability to go in and create not only different messages for these different points in time, but also different trigger points. So whether that's 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, it's going to be very dependent upon that customer journey that you're trying to create. But you leverage that to try and get them back into the game. Use the triggers and use the different templates to be able to say, come back, we miss you. Or if it's something where they've monetized in the past and there's a good opportunity to monetize them again, this might be the right time to send them a one-off promotion and try to get them. Those promotions can be different, again, at the 7, 14, 30-day mark. It's really dependent upon what are you trying to achieve and what is the best way to do that with your customer. Don't be afraid to test different tactics here, but just know that leveraging those automated messages give you the opportunity to send it or set it once and then send it on a repeated basis. Once you find you have a very large group that has fallen into this a bit of an inactive or somebody who has not been on there in a long time, don't be afraid to go create a separate segment or a separate group to send another message to them, letting them know there's new gameplay, there's been updates to the graphics, take advantage of these new things. Those are really the way forward so that you can get them back into the game and not go focused and have to spend a lot of money on cost of acquisition again. We know that becomes very laborsome to your team. So now that we've talked about some of the different strategies and tactics you can take, I want to talk about measuring success. As we mentioned before, you really got to think about your customer journey and your life cycle. When you think about that, what are the areas you're trying to influence in each stage of that? Is it the lifetime value? Are you focused on the sessions per given period of time? Is it purely daily active users? Is it that monthly retention? As you're measuring that, you need to get a benchmark. Know where you are to start, know what you're trying to change to get them to come back in, and then measure the change you're making over time. This is going to help you stay focused, stay on track, and continue to optimize against the right things. Just like we learned in elementary school, make sure you're experimenting with one thing at a time and keeping that control in place. That's going to give you the best understanding and the most direct line to being able to understand those changes that you've made. Leveraging OneSignal's outcomes is a great opportunity here. We have the ability to tell you not only what were the results of this message in terms of the delivery rates, click rates, but also what actions did they take on the site after that? Were they on the site for X amount of time? Did they buy a product? Did they get to a certain point in the game? You can set up all these different outcomes to measure those success points so that you know that you're driving the exact thing that you're trying to do and continue to push that further, because those benchmarks are going to move as you're having success. A couple statistics here for you at the bottom. Push boosts app engagement by 88% and increases app retention by 3 to 10%. We've been doing this for 5+ years now. There's a lot of data in that OneSignal world. We've seen strong success. We want you to be able to take advantage of this. The in-app messages are also showing great success in app retention by improving it at 27%. So don't be afraid to leverage different channels within OneSignal to be able to drive these different outcomes and results that you're looking for. And then finally, I know that integrating a new data isn't always the right path. So we've created integrations with a lot of the leading partners in the space, whether it's Mixpanel, Amplitude, Segment, there's others, and we're working on many more as well. Leverage those if you already have them in place. Utilize the existing work streams, and don't be afraid to tie the OneSignal success back to those, or the OneSignal testing, I should say, back to those, so that you can truly measure the success. If this is an area of interest to you, I do want to throw a quick plug out there. At this time next week, we have a Boost Your Performance with the latest OneSignal integrations webinar that will be done by one of my colleagues. And so jump on that to learn more about all the integrations you see up there, as well as what's coming up, as well as how to leverage them best so that you can measure those results. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen today and learn a bit more about the customer engagement and retention with OneSignal. That concludes the content we have, so we'll move now to the Q&A section. So for anybody who has any questions, please feel free to enter them into that Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll do our best to get those answered for you. All right. It doesn't look like we have any questions today. So looks like we're going to wrap up a little bit early. If you do have questions come in, don't hesitate to go to the dashboard on your OneSignal account. The little red button down at the bottom, feel free to enter any questions you have there. Our support team will help get in touch with you. Or if you have a customer success manager that you work with on a regular basis, feel free to reach out to them as well. They're all very well versed in what we've talked about today and will be more than happy to help you. So again, really appreciate your time today. Good luck building out your customer journeys and driving success through those different channels that we've talked about.